Hey, everybody, I'm Bruce Marshall. We're going to talk some college football wins here and the Indiana Hoosiers. Man, I've been waiting to talk about Indiana, and let's see if what the Hoosiers can do for an encore after that national title win last year. I've got some definite opinions on Indiana. Talked to a lot of our sources and scouts in the Midwest and the Big Ten who have their opinions too. We'll put it all together and come up with a recommendation on Curt Cignetti and his Hoosiers. Can the magic continue another year in Bloomington? We'll have that for you in just a moment. First of all, though, a couple of quick housekeeping reminders before we get to talking about the Hoosiers and their win total for this season. Don't forget, as always, click that subscribe button on the screen right there. Make sure you get all of our Wager Talk TV videos. Also, don't forget, special offer on my picks here. We've had a really good summer in Major League Baseball, NFL preseason getting going now, college football coming soon. All of my picks the rest of the year through December 31st, one special price, $799. Small compared to the monthly price, which would be $700 more than that if you went monthly. But you get all my picks, all the football, all the baseball, NBA, college hoops, NHL, European soccer, all of my picks through the rest of the year, just $799. That is reduced down almost $700 from the monthly price. Okay, let's talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. Can they repeat? First time a college team could do that since Georgia, and Kirby Smart did that a few years ago with the Bulldogs. And the win total for Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers, 10.5, 10.5 wins. So the odds makers think maybe there's a chance they can get back and certainly perhaps get back to the playoffs. That is a pretty hefty win total for Indiana. Now, what's going on with the Hoosiers? I got a lot of things to talk about here. First of all, we know this has been a miracle the last couple of years, what Curt Cignetti has done in Bloomington since he came over from James Madison. Listen, I am old enough, though, to remember the last real Indiana miracle, which I still think is the best story in Hoosier football annals. 1967 under John Pont. That was the only Rose Bowl Indiana ever went to before last season. That one came totally out of nowhere. Pont had 3 wins combined his first 2 years with the Hoosiers. He had come in from Yale, where he'd been a couple of years after a pretty decorated run at Miami, Ohio. But that team in 67 was magic, came out of nowhere, and not just coming out of nowhere. It was the way they won games almost every week. Perils of Pauline escapes, edge of your seats right at the end. The most exciting team I can ever remember. A lot of sophomores, Harry Gonzo at quarterback, Jade Butcher, the receiver, John Eisenbarger, the running back. They even had a game against a winless Wisconsin team that wasn't decided until the last play of the game. And that last win over Purdue, one of the all-time wins in Indiana history, got them to the Rose Bowl. There was actually a 3-way tie between the Hoosiers, Minnesota, and Purdue for the Big Ten title that year. Purdue ineligible because it had gone to the Rose Bowl the year before, back in the days of the no-repeat rule in the Big Ten. And even though Minnesota had beaten Indiana, the 3-way tie, they went for the last team who had not been to Pasadena. At that point, it was Indiana. It was a magical year. And John Pont, by the way, the coach, he only had one more winning season after that in 68. His last 12 seasons as a head coach, including a long run at Northwestern after Indiana, didn't have a winning record. So in retrospect, that looks quite special and a great storyline. No such drama with Indiana the last couple of years with Curt Cignetti, what's been going on there. And I still can't quite fathom what he's been able to do. 27-2 over the last 2 years, just stomping foes left and right on the way to the national title last year. Still can't quite wrap my head around that Indiana's the national title winner. But you watch the Hoosiers the last 2 years, and it was really quite something there. Signetti worked the portal about as well as any coach could ever do it. They upgraded the talent almost immediately, brought in a lot of players from James Madison where they had been winning. But he added to that with some shrewd portal moves, including last year bringing Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback, in from Cal. I liked Mendoza. I didn't expect he was going to be that good. He ends up winning the Heisman, first NFL draft pick with the Raiders, and so forth and so on. It was quite a magical run there by Indiana. Can the Hoosiers repeat this year? That's the question. And can they get over that win total, 10.5? And that's the subject, really, of this segment. I'm not so sure. But first of all, a complaint about the Hoosiers, and this is the schedule here. And they're actually bragging about it. They don't have a power foe on their non-conference schedule. Now, I understand downgrading the schedule and what the AD Scott Dolson was trying to do a few years ago. They had been losing for a long time, and this is what Kansas State did early in Bill Snyder's tenure. They had lost for so many years. He downgraded the schedule and then got Kansas State used to some winning. Then they started adding a few more teams like USC and some others onto schedules, Iowa, later years. Indiana, though, continues to downgrade, and this year we've got North Texas, Howard, and Western Kentucky. Now, last year, North Texas might have been an interesting game, but I suggest if Eric Morris would have stayed at North Texas, maybe Indiana would have backed out of that too. They have backed out of games versus Virginia and Louisville here in the recent years, and a series against Notre Dame starting in 2030 that the Hoosier fans would have loved. Nope, Indiana doesn't want to do that one either. By the way, Notre Dame replaced USC with Indiana on the schedule in 2030-31, so reviving that series. So there is something good about Indiana pulling out, but still, this is a gutless approach by Indiana. You don't see Ohio State doing this. You certainly don't see some of the SEC powers doing it. And I'm sorry, Indiana, you got to do better than that. The next power foe opponent on an Indiana non-conference schedule out to 2032. It's not a power foe, and not even a power four foe. They don't have any. They've got UConn out there, unless UConn gets into a major league. So there really isn't any non-conference foe as a power four rep out as far as time goes here, out to 2032 for Indiana. And they're sort of bragging about it too. The Big Ten is so tough. They say, listen, all conferences are tough. They've always been tough. And I don't buy it. Nonetheless, they have been great there. And what they've been doing the past few years in Indiana has been something special. But what about this year? Can they repeat? Well, offensively, we talked about Mendoza a second ago. He is now into the NFL. And Signetti back into the portal where he's worked magic the last few years, brings up Josh Hoover from TCU. Maybe the top-rated quarterback in the portal. He's thrown for over 9,000 yards the past few years with the Horned Frogs. So he comes in very well regarded to Bloomington, but a lot of new faces, the playmakers here, skill position players at Indiana after several graduated from last year. One who does return is Charlie Becker, big play wide receiver, but the running back room, new. Turbo Richard comes in from Boston College where he had a little bit of success. He's going to probably be the featured back here, and some receivers coming in as well, targets for Josh Hoover. One thing Hoover doesn't do quite as well as Mendoza is move. Mendoza was a surprisingly good scrambler out of the pocket. Hoover doesn't bring that dimension. And you wonder if that little bit extra that Mendoza was able to bring the past few years was the difference for Indiana. And that's what a lot of our sources and scouts in the Midwest have been saying, that this was really quite special, what Mendoza was able to do, that little extra bit of mobility. And that might have been what pushed Indiana over the top. Hoover doesn't give him that. So, I mean, that's going to be a little bit of a change. Overall, there were 23 graduated seniors who left last year, including a lot of those guys who came along from James Madison with Signetti. A couple of guys left early from the defense to the NFL. So there is some reloading that has to go on here. They're still pretty loaded, especially on the defensive side. This defense ranked fourth nationally last year, second in scoring. Bryant Haynes stays as the coordinator. In fact, the staff has stayed pretty much intact with 9 of 10 assistants still in the fold for Signetti. So that's a pretty good thing. And there are still some star players on defense we want to watch, including Tyreek Tucker, the defensive tackle. He is awfully good. They've got a couple of defensive ends and Tucker, All-American, probably first-round draft choice in the NFL probably next year. A couple of defensive ends from Kansas State, and I don't think they're going to drop off too much on the defensive side. But this is a pretty high bar to clear at 10.5 wins. And if you talk to our guys in the Midwest last year, I know Indiana was overwhelming last season, but they still had a couple of escapes, very close game, narrow escape against Iowa. Iowa almost also beat Oregon later in the season. Narrow escape there, and an even more precarious win at Penn State. A miracle finish there to beat the Nittany Lions to stay undefeated. Also, that Big Ten title game against Ohio State, that was very close. That was beyond the regular season, so it wouldn't have impacted the season wins last year. But that was a close 13-10 game, and they could have lost that national title game to Miami had Carson Beck not overthrown that pass in the last minute. And Jamari Sharp, by the way, the guy who made that game-saving interception, he is back at cornerback. So there are some playmakers returning on that defense that was very good last year. But we're looking at the schedule this year. We talked about the non-conference. Yeah, it's not that tough, but there are some potential banana peels out there. They've got to go. There's only 4 road games, but they do have to go to Nebraska, which I think is going to be, might not be that easy. If Anthony Colandrea comes in there at quarterback from UNLV, like people think in Lincoln, he could make a big difference. They've got to go to Michigan. Hasn't been on the schedule lately. And this is Kyle Whittingham trying to revive the Wolverines. They have to go to Washington on November 21st, probably in the rain. Washington figures to be very dangerous. This could be a tough hurdle to overcome. Also, Ohio State comes into Bloomington in October, loaded for bear after losing 13-10 in the Big Ten title game to the Hoosiers. Remember, they blew out Indiana the year before at Columbus in 2024, one of two losses Signetti has suffered. USC will also come into Bloomington in October, first time the Trojans have played at Indiana in over 40 years. There are some banana peels on this schedule. And with the fact I don't know that Mendoza is going to be that easy to replace. I know Hoover's good, but that extra dimension that Mendoza gave them, I'm not sure that's going to work. And just staying at this high plateau year after year, and the odds makers are putting this bar very high at 10.5 wins. I think, and a lot of the guys I talk to in the Midwest think, that's probably a bit too high. I can see Indiana losing twice. You lose twice, the under works here, and you're probably still a playoff team, which I think Indiana should be this year. But I think 10.5 wins is too much. I'm looking under 10.5 Indiana, laying about 130 with that. So that seems to be where the price is shaded right now. But it's an under for me, reflecting a lot of our sources and scouts in the Midwest. And let's see if Indiana can do it again. I think it's going to be kind of tough. Okay, don't forget, as always, if you got some comments, hit the comment box on the screen there. I always love to hear from you. And don't forget those special offers we've got going right now on my picks. And that includes the rest of the year up through December 31st, just $799, big $700 savings from the monthly price. Also, don't forget to go up to the Goldsheet site. We got some of these previews up there. And remember, the Goldsheet will be coming up in football season weekly, starting at the end of August. So until next time, we'll talk some more football with you and some more college football season wins. It's a goodbye from me.